Hello, in today's step-by-step walkthrough video, I will be using Jamovi version 2.6.44 to perform, interpret, and write up a chi-square test for independence. I recommend downloading today's dataset before we begin. You can also access this resource in the Psychology Resource Library. Here we have our dataset within Jamovi. You can see that we have two variables in this dataset. If we double click on toothpaste preference, we can see that this is a categorical or nominal variable. It has two levels. You can either have a preference for paste toothpaste or gel toothpaste. If we look at profession, this is also a categorical or nominal variable, and again it also has two levels. You can either be in a non-dentistry related profession or a dentistry related profession. So with this study, we're interested in seeing whether you are in a dentistry-related profession or not is associated with a preference for a particular type of toothpaste. To run our analysis, we click on Frequencies here in the Analyses tab. We click on Independent Samples. And here we would typically include our independent variable within columns and our dependent variable within rows. It doesn't produce any different results depending on where you put your variable. It's more just to support interpretation with how it presents that information in the output. In this specific example, we consider profession to be the independent variable, so we'll move that over to the columns box, and we'll move toothpaste preference into rows. We then click on statistics. Here we want to ensure that chi-squared is selected, and we can also keep the default setting of a non-directional hypothesis selected. Confidence intervals should also be selected, and that should be set to 95%. We also want to select phi and Kramer's V, and this will give us our effect size. Within cells, we want both the observed and the expected counts, as well as the column percentages. We can see then that our results are automatically presented in the right-hand window. Here we have a 2x2 contingency table. In other words, we have two variables, profession and toothpaste. Within each of those variables, we have two levels. In other words, we have four possible combinations of these levels. Specifically, you could be in a non-dentistry related profession and prefer paste. You could be in a non-dentistry related profession and prefer gel. You could be in a dentistry related profession and prefer paste. Or you could be in a dentistry related profession and prefer gel. If we look at the interpretation of our observed versus expected counts, expected count is the number of participants that we would expect to be in this combination if there was no relationship between profession and toothpaste preference. So we'd expect to see 35.24 people. We saw 33 people falling into this combination of levels within our dataset. Here for dentistry related and paste, that combination, we'd expect to see 34.76 if there was no relationship. In actual fact, we see 37. And that interpretation is the same for the remaining two combinations. Looking then at the percentages, for those participants who are in a dentistry related field, 51 of them preferred paste, while 49% of them preferred gel. So this looks to be a very similar likelihood of preferring either paste or gel. If we move over to those who are in a non-dentistry related profession, we can see that 45% of those preferred paste and 55% of those people preferred gel. So there was a slightly higher preference for gel relative to paste. However, we need to identify whether the relationship between these two variables is actually statistically significant. So we move down to our chi-square tests table. If we look at our p-value, we can see that that is above the 0.05 threshold. In other words, we have a non-significant relationship between profession and toothpaste preference. We're also interested in our effect size, and we'll be looking at Kramer's V today. This is a commonly used effect size, and it can be used regardless of the number of levels or categories that you have within each of your variables. And we can see here that this is a very weak effect size. The write-up for this analysis could look as follows. A chi-square test for independence was conducted to determine whether there was an association between working in a dentistry-related profession and preferences between gel and paste toothpastes. Participants working in a dentistry-related profession had a similar likelihood of preferring paste or gel, while those in a non-dentistry-related profession demonstrated a slightly higher preference for gel over paste. However, the association between profession and toothpaste preference was non-significant with a very weak effect size. If we then think about the values that we are incorporating into that write-up, we have the percentages for all four possible combinations of those levels of the two variables. We include the degrees of freedom, our chi-square statistic, as well as the p-value and the effect size value. You can access the full suite of resources in the Psychology Resource Library. Follow our YouTube channel for more walkthrough videos like this one.